All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something pretty wild from our source material. The idea that the universe, and maybe even ancient scripture itself, is built on a kind of hidden mathematical code. So let's just get right to it. The big question our source material asks is this: could there really be a secret code, a mathematical design woven right into the fabric of the Bible? Okay, so to even begin to unpack this, we need to get our heads around the main tool here, which is called Gematria. It's this really old practice. Basically, every letter in an alphabet, like Hebrew or Greek, gets a number. The whole point is that if different words or phrases add up to the same number, they might have some kind of hidden connection. It's like a secret language of numbers. So where do we start looking for this code? Well, our investigation kicks off right at the beginning. I mean, the very beginning. Genesis 1:1. The source we're looking at says this is where the first, and maybe the biggest, clue is hiding in plain sight. Now, we all know this line, right? In the beginning. But here's the key. For this analysis, the English translation doesn't matter. We have to go straight to the original Hebrew text. And when you take those 7 original Hebrew words and you add up their gematria values, you get a very specific number. 2,701. Okay, so 2701, is that just a random number? Well, according to the source, not even close. It has all these overlapping mathematical quirks. For one, it's what's called the 73rd triangular number. You know, if you add up 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way to 73. It's also the product of 2 key prime numbers, 37 times 73. And then, get this, it's also the sum of the square gematria values for God's name YAH-WEH and the name Adam. That's a lot of coincidences. So we've got these interesting numerical patterns. But this is where the theory really kicks into high gear. This is where it goes from just, interesting numerology to something way bigger. We're talking about the fundamental constants that run our entire universe. Yeah, this is a massive leap. The claim isn't just that there are patterns. The argument is that these patterns actually encode precise knowledge of universal constants like pi and Euler's number, E. The numbers that are literally the bedrock of modern math and physics. I mean, if that's true, it suggests a level of math knowledge that just shouldn't have existed back then. It makes you ask, where did this text even come from? So you're probably asking, okay, how? How do they get pi out of a Bible verse? Well, the source lays out this really complex formula that's based entirely on the verse's structure. The number of letters, the number of words, and their gematria values, all multiplied and divided in a specific way. The math is dense, but the result? The result is pretty startling. What that formula spits out is a value for pi that's accurate to 4 decimal places. I mean, look at that. It's incredibly close to the actual value. You have to admit that's the kind of thing that makes you go, And just to put that into perspective, historically, the source claims this was encoded around 1300 BCE. Humanity wouldn't calculate pi to that level of accuracy for another 1700 years, not until a Chinese mathematician named Zhu Chongzhi came along in the 5th century. That's a long time. All right, so the investigation zooms out now. It moves from these super specific verses to a much broader pattern, one that's supposed to be woven not just through the text, but through all of creation. And this universal pattern is all based on a really famous mathematical idea, the golden ratio, also known as phi. You might have heard of it. It's often called the divine proportion, and for good reason. It just seems to pop up everywhere in the world around us. So the number is about 1.618, and once you know what to look for, you start seeing it in the craziest places: the shape of galaxies, seashells, the proportions of your own hand. So does this ratio show up in the text too? Well, according to the source, yeah, in some really interesting ways. Here's a cool one. If you count up all the verses in the King James Bible that use the word good and all the ones that use evil, the difference between them is 86. And what's the gematria value for Elohim, one of the Hebrew names for God? You guessed it, 86. So that begs the question, what happens if you take this divine proportion and apply it to the entire Bible? The whole thing? Well, our source material did the math. If you divide the total number of verses by the golden ratio, it points you to one very specific spot, verse number 19,222. And that verse, it's Jeremiah 10:20.
It's this really sad verse about destruction and loss, and it specifically mentions the tabernacle, which was believed to be God's actual dwelling place on earth. Kind of spooky, right?
And this is where the argument gets really big. The source says this isn't just a fun fact about a book. It claims that this exact same mathematical principle, the golden ratio, is like a blueprint that shapes the physical, natural world all around us. I mean, take a look at this. This is Hurricane Floyd, a monster Category 4 storm from 1999. And when you look at it from space, the claim is that its spiral arms form a nearly perfect golden spiral. Then you've got something on a totally different scale, but just as elegant, the Nautilus shell. This little creature has been building its home using this exact mathematically perfect spiral for 500 million years. It's mind-boggling.
So, okay, after seeing all this evidence laid out in the source material, it all comes down to one big open question. Let's just recap what we've seen. We've got these really strange mathematical properties in Genesis 1:1. We've got the apparent encoding of pi, way ahead of its time. We have word counts that line up with key Gematria values. And then we have this golden ratio showing up in both the text and in nature.
So that brings us to the ultimate question, the one at the very heart of all this. What are we looking at here? Is this proof of a deliberate hidden design, or is it just a whole lot of really amazing coincidences? Or is it just what our brains do? We are incredible pattern-seeking machines after all. Do we just find patterns even where there's no real meaning?
Our source material leaves us with this thought from Plato. Geometry existed before creation. It's a pretty powerful idea, right? That maybe the blueprint for everything, the universe, language, life itself, was all mathematical from the very start. So the final question is really for you. When you look at all this, do you see design, coincidence, or something else entirely?